hello, Miranda here. I'm going to be really efficient tonight. And the reason I want to be really efficient in this Facebook Live about complaints is I often get either inboxes or people will come onto the group, the Medical Aesthetics Mindset Warriors, and will ask if they've had a really bad emotional experience with a complaint. And then what tends to happen is they are panicking or they're just feeling like really worthless, like, oh my God, how did I get into this situation? This person hates me. I'm a terrible clinician. I'm going to lose my NMC pin. I'm going to get sued until kingdom come. And you guys are all panicking. And I want to give you the secret formula, which is what I have created about how to deal with a good complaint. But I want to kind of give it to you quickly because you're in that panic mode. And I have a couple of lives that I've done on complaints, but they aren't in this kind of formulaic stepwise process that I'm going to teach you tonight. And I really want to keep this really disciplined. I'm only going to do half an hour because, well, first of all, it's 10 o'clock at night, but also I want this to be quite kind of chunky and meaty and just neat, so that when you are panicking and you have a complaint, you can go, right, I do this, and you can dive in and start solving the problem instead of staying in your lizard brain and freaking out. This live, if any of you guys trained with Skin Viva Training, my company, then you may have seen pretty much the meat of this live a long time ago, like 18 months ago, something like that. I did it onto the closed Facebook group. And it was so well received, and I've never quite reproduced it since, but I wanted to do it on this open forum on my page so that it could be seen more widely because I get so many questions about complaints. So, a little bit about me. What's my credentials for talking about this? Apart from the fact that I'm obsessed with mindset, I used to be a complaints manager at the Healthcare Commission, it's now the Care Quality Commission, and I dealt with second stage NHS complaints, so anything that hadn't been resolved locally would come to me and my colleagues. And also I have obviously run Skin Viva for 11 years now, and we get complaints. And this is the first thing that I want to say, is that you have to understand and accept that you will get complaints. I think too many of us think that there's a magical world where we don't get complaints and everyone loves us. In fact, many of us are trying to live our life like that and run our lives like that so that we avoid the pain of someone rejecting us through a complaint or whatever. So you must drop that BS. You will get a complaint. It's just maths. Honestly, there will come a point and you have to accept that and basically try and draw. So just accept it. That's the first mindset thing. When you get a complaint, don't go into a lizard brain spin and think it's all you and you're a disgraceful human being or that they are a disgraceful human being. Just accept it. It's gonna happen. Okay. So let me dive in now to my formula for complaints management. In fact, just before I do and I go on to my very personal Miranda formula, which is incredibly it's outcomes driven, so it's about actually getting a good result from this. I just want to do three little, almost like I feel like I have to say them things. So the first one is consult your insurers. Now, I'll be honest and say I don't really consult my insurers. I deal with this as on a first principles basis, as one human being who is emotionally intelligent and has been through this process to another human being who is hurting. And that's the way I approach it. And it's got me amazing results. But I see people on groups kind of going, oh yeah, I consulted my insurers and they told me to not talk to the person, only do it via email. And they told me to tell the person that they had quote the consent form back at them and give them a copy of that. And I kind of think to myself, okay, but is actually going to get you the result? Is that human being going to feel heard if they have the consent form shoved back in their face? So I'm kind of contradicting myself at this moment. Hi, Ken. But I kind of feel like I have to say it because I think legally, really, you should consult your insurers. So there you go. Legally, consult your insurers. Terms and conditions apply. That's my little That's my little piece there. Another couple of super practical points. One is that you must write notes. This is boring but true. You will forget what you have done. So if you said to this person, via phone on Tuesday evening, X, Y, and Z, you must write that down somewhere for your own notes. Otherwise you'll forget what you've said. And the third super practical point is do everything with speed. Complaints, very important. You must get back to people when you say you will. You must let them know what the parameters are. Sort of say, my policy is to get back to you within, well, you don't need to necessarily quote policy, but you just need to, human beings need boundaries and they need to know where they're at in the process. So just make sure that you let people know, keep them informed and keep it quick. Okay, right. Terms and conditions over. Let me crack on with my formula for complaint success. So the first thing is a mindset thing. And it is the way you need to show up to complaints. This will be the crucial fuel, mindset fuel and emotional fuel you will need to get you through and to get a great outcome. This whole thing is about getting a great outcome. The first thing you need to do is, before you go anywhere or do anything with this complaint that has hit you, so let's say in this example, let's say that someone has hit you with you've had a big old bruise. So this person's had a big old bruise and that obviously that is a normal side effect. You definitely would have told them about that in the consenting process, but now they're raging. They're like, oh my God, like I've got this wedding coming up and I just really wanted to look good for the wedding. What have you done to me? They might be throwing it all at the wall. Let's go really hard in this example. So let's say they say, I consulted my sister and she said that you shouldn't bruise like this. So let's say that they've had a big stinker bruise from a Botox, which is unusual and unfortunate. And so I had a big stinker bruise and I told my sister about it. She says she's been having Botox down the road for 15 years and she's never had a bruise in her, in this area. So it's throwing it all over the wall. So they're kind of questioning your skills. It's getting a bit threatening and a bit mean, or it comes across as mean. And let's say that this person has asked for a refund, let's say, for example. Okay. The first thing you need to do before approaching this is you need to get naked. And what I mean by this is you need to take off your ego coat. Your ego is just like a coat. You wear it. You learnt it in your childhood and in all of your life experience. It isn't you. You can take it off. And I'm not going to go into the definition of ego, but I think we'll get what ego means, generally speaking. Ego is the part of you in this context is not going to serve you. So if you go in all guns blazing, you bastard, or, oh God, oh no, they're going to kill me, it's not going to serve you. You're not going to show up well. So take off the part of you that feels in danger and take off the part of you that feels like this is a battle. This is not a battle. Complaints management is not a battle. You should both walk away from this with dignity and with a reasonable outcome. Both of you should feel, you who's been complained about and the person who's complaining should feel that you have had a reasonable outcome from this, or else someone is going to be living in resentment. But in order to achieve that, you have to take off your coat of ego. It's not about you. They are just scared. And this is what I'm going to come on to in a sec. But before you can even approach this well, you have to realize this. It's not about you, even when they are throwing it all at the wall and seemingly getting personal and saying, let's say that you are, let's say you're like a dental therapist doing treatments and they might say, well, I went to a dentist around the corner and the dentist did it well and you're not, even though getting really personal like that, you have to realize this isn't about you. Take your ego coat off. And I'll go on to explain why. The next step is that you need to put your empathy cape on. This is literally a case of you need to introduce your superpower now. We all have this superpower of empathy. Obviously, some people, I guess, have demonstrated it in their life better than others. But the bottom line is you are a medical professional. You can't have got through your career today without empathy. Put your empathy superpower cape on. Take your ego coat off, put your empathy cape on. What do I mean by this? Today, I was at Skin Viva and I crossed over, there's like a little, a section, like a pedestrianised section between the shop over the road and our office, our clinic. And there was a girl in this pedestrianised bit on the phone. People often kind of congregate there on their lunch or whatever on the phone. And she was on the phone to her bank. And all I heard her saying was, it's quite shocking actually, she's just like a normal girl, like pretty much my age, whatever. And she said, I am going to come down to your office and I'm going to blow it up. That's how annoyed I am. I want this sorting. And she mentioned that it was a bank issue. So literally, you've now got this woman threatening to blow up the bank that she's talking to because she's so incredibly frustrated. And I was a bit like shocked by it. And I walked into the office and I looked out between the little frosted section and I saw that she was crying. She was now off the phone and she was crying. And what we don't realise in complaints, because we have our ego coat on so much of the time, we don't realise that these people who are complaining about us, they are the vulnerable ones. You feel it's probably the most vulnerable and exposed you've ever felt professionally when you get your first aesthetics complaint, for example, or indeed, your third, fourth, whatever. It feels incredibly vulnerable. You feel like you're the one under threat. You feel like they're going to have you for your NMC pin. They're going to, take you for everything you're worth. They're going to sue you. You're going to do a bad review. You feel vulnerable. And actually what you must realize is you are the one in power. You are the clinician. You are the one who's wielding the needle. You are the one who's got the ability to potentially, ideally, obviously help them if they've got an uneven eyebrow or whatever it is, or a bruise. I know you can't because the bruise is a bruise, but you are still the one who is in that position of caring for this person who is in your care. And you think you're the vulnerable one, but you've got their money. If they're trying to get a refund, this is incredibly important because the moment that you understand that you are in power is the moment that you can truly empathize with this powerless person who's essentially acting out because they feel powerless, just like a toddler. And then also so you can empathize with them and truly understand what they want, which will help you get a good outcome from the complaint, but also you feel better. You need to realize, guys, that you are in power and this is the ball is in your court. You can control this. You can, of course, you need to do it in partnership with them, but you are not as vulnerable as you feel. So I'm going to keep this trucking because I want to keep this at half an hour. So take your ego coat off, put your empathy coat on. What do I actually mean by that? So actually, it's worth kind of hammering this point home about the toddler. So I don't know whether you guys have toddlers or have had toddlers in the past, but notoriously toddlers act out because they can't communicate very well. And when that woman was on the phone today telling that bank that she's going to blow that up, which by anyone's estimations is deeply unreasonable, like literally she probably got the phone hung up on her because that's abuse, isn't it? But that isn't, and then I saw her crying. That is a toddler behaviour. She wasn't getting anywhere. She probably wasn't being dealt with very well by this person, and so she threatened violence. And that's toddler behaviours. Toddlers are always doing that, aren't they? They come up and hit you or whatever randomly because they can't communicate. So you need to help them to communicate. And this is what empathy is. This is what proper empathy is. It is the process of understanding and then extracting information from someone's brain and checking understanding. And that is what you need to do next. You cannot do a good complaint with a good outcome where you both feel that you were reasonably treated unless you do this empathy step. So put your empathy coat on. And then this next bit for you health professionals will probably be, very familiar, but which is the process of just hearing someone, active listening. But I do think it's worth saying because I think when you feel vulnerable, and I see this almost every day on forums, if you feel vulnerable, you might miss this step. So do not miss this step, or else you will get a shit outcome from a complaint. Unless you get lucky and they just go away, but it's unlikely. And then at the very least, even if you don't do the empathy step and they just kind of fizzle and the complaint fizzles, you will still worry about it, won't you? This is why it's incredibly important for us to resolve complaints, because if you don't resolve them, you'll just worry about them. So how do you do that? Active listening. Pretty simple. Ask them questions, ask them open questions, not kind of like questions that have a yes and no answer to them. Just for example, well, actually this is quite a important practical step, is don't be WhatsApping. Because when I first started in Skin Viva, WhatsApp wasn't a thing. And so I had to call people. But you have to try and get them to speak. I know sometimes they don't want to speak and everyone's so kind of tied to text these days, but you need to be firm and you need to say, if they text you, like, I'm really unhappy about this bruise, I want a refund. Say just something very, very basic, but commanding. So, hi Jane, I'm so sorry to hear you've had a bruise. I will definitely need to talk this through as the next step. When's a good time to talk? Be commanding. And what you'll find is 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, oh, okay, Thursday or whatever. So be commanding, get them on the phone. Then when they're on the phone, extract the feelings. How is this making her feel? Or just let her go through the process. So this is how, just consult my notes, make sure I'm on track. Oh God. This is the process of, oh God, I'm going down too much. This is the process of hearing them, letting it all come out. So the vent, you need to just let them vent. But you can start the vent by kind of unplugging it, as it were. So you can say something just dead open like, hi Jane, thanks for your time. So what's been going on? What's been going on for you? Something like that, or please tell me everything, or whatever. And then it'll just go, and they will vomit it all out. And it can be quite angry. It can be quite, voluminous. It could just be loads and loads and loads and loads. And it will always feel, but if you've got your empathy cape on, you've taken off your ego coat, then you will have that armory, and this is an important part of it. Just let them vent. Don't interrupt. Don't try and get quite a bit out before you take it to the next step. The next step is to summarize it back to them. Do not miss this step. I've done this, and I'm sure I still continue to do this sometimes. So let me grab my brew. Don't make the mistake of assuming you know. Sometimes I do this with my nearest and dearest, so I'm not always, Tim's just sitting there, I'm not always great with Tim for some reason, so I'll just kind of assume I know what's going on with him. And I'm not talking about him complaining about me necessarily, although that might happen as well. I'm talking about him maybe just generally having, something bad going on with him. I will just kind of jump to the end and say, oh yeah, so this, and this. No, I need to listen and then summarize back. So the way that you summarize back, which is what makes them feel heard, is you can do it. Empathy is not sympathy. So you can do it without agreeing with them. You don't need to just say, oh God, yeah, you're so right and I'm wrong. And, don't incriminate yourself at any stage during the complaints process. Don't say, oh God, yeah, I can really see, of course, this is a disaster. Your life is fucked because of this bruise and I'm a bad clinician and to be honest, I'm just going to quit. Is that what you want? I'm just going to quit. No, don't do that. Don't incriminate yourself. Don't agree with them at this point. Just reflect back to them what they said. Use the words that they use. That's a great technique for making someone feel heard. So, and by the way, none of this is cynical. You need empathy in order to get a good result for you as well as them. So I'll come on to that in a sec. So, reflecting back to them. So it could be something like, so Jane, at this stage, it's really important for me to make sure that I've heard you properly. So can I just reflect back and just make sure that I'm definitely getting it right and hearing you correctly? So you feel like you came along, you spent £250, you're really looking forward to the wedding that's coming up, and you just wanted to look fresher for it. You've had the treatment, you've experienced this bruise, and now you feel you look worse. Does that sound about right? At that point, and this, I haven't said anything, I haven't incriminated myself or said that we've done anything wrong. I'm just reflecting back to them. At that point, you'll get one of two things. You might get a, well, it's not really that, it's this. Fine, just go back round it. Keep going until you get this. This is the phrase you need, or something similar. You need, that's it, or yes, or something super simple like that. You can't, if you hear someone sort of say, yeah, well, or anything like that, you haven't hit the nail on the head. You must get this back at you. You must have it acknowledged that they feel acknowledged, or else you can't move beyond this point. If they don't think you've got it right, then keep going around it. So if they say, yeah, that's it, and they might reiterate it again, they say, I just, £250 is a lot of money to me, I really, I want to look fresh, and now I'm going to look worse, and they'll say it again. So at that point, you don't need to go back round it. You've got your that's right, and they feel heard, so you can carry on. At that point, you need to, in my opinion, or it's very helpful if you can, buy yourself some time. So this first call that you have procured with them is very much a data gathering exercise, and that's okay. It's not a solution creating exercise. So remember this, because sometimes it can feel like you feel like flustered because you don't know what to do. But I would say, just like anything good in the world, if you're doing a scientific experiment or something like that, you have to also research. You have to gather the data, and it's okay to gather the data, to listen to them and make them feel heard, and then to go away, reflect, and then offer the solution. In fact, it's actually better for them and for you, because if you sort of say, I wanted to, hear it from your perspective, and now I'm going to go away and reflect, I'll give you some words to say, then they will feel like, oh, this is part of a process. I get it now. Oh, she seems professional. So, honestly, that will really, really help you, and it buys you the time to reflect and to not feel as pressured. So if you say something like, what I'm going to do, Jane, is I'm just going to go away, I'm going to consult I wanted to speak to you first, that was really important to me, and now I'm going to go away, I'm going to consult my notes, I'm going to consult, and then maybe sort of say colleagues, associates, people who are, your peers, whatever word you use. Don't go away and say something like, oh, I don't know what to do about this, I'm just going to go and talk to, the nurse down the road. Just keep it classy, and just sort of say, I'm going to go away and consult my peers, my fellow clinicians, and I'm going to look at my notes. And if there's another party involved as well, maybe talk to them, whatever you need to do, but it's good. It's a good thing to buy yourself some time, and they will feel like, okay, fine, she's going through a process. When you say that though, you do need to commit to the next step, which can be quite low level. So you can just say, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, and I will get back to you X. And then usually like tomorrow, something like that. Don't make it in an hour, because then you're setting yourself up to fall. Give yourself some time, and give yourself time to sleep, and for them to sleep. They've vented, now they've got that out of the way, and tomorrow should be a calmer affair, if you've done your job right and you really have heard them properly. So now you go away, and you can look at your notes and consult people on whatever. But the most important point of this next step is you need to make a plan. Now your plan is what solution you are going to offer them next, or what's next step you're going to offer them. And this will be based on some very important principles. You need to, first of all, establish in this kind of research period, you need to establish, what do they want? Or rather, you need to reflect, what does this person, this complainant want? They are driven, everyone is driven by different things. This is so crucial, guys. I've made mistakes in the past, a few mistakes, where I've quickly offered someone like a freebie, oh, your next treatment will be 25% off or whatever. And they've actually been disgusted at me. No, it's not about the money. So actually you can make things worse unless you truly understand what this person is after. So this is how people tend to break down. The number one category of complaints in aesthetics is people who just want it rectified. So you've got an uneven eyebrow, swelling, whatever, unevenness, whatever. They just want it rectified. That's sort of fairly simple to deal with. That's the majority of people. There is a next group of people who want money. Now, please try to resist thinking of them as money-grabbing bastards. They're not. They're just human beings who feel vulnerable, and this is their way to kind of claw back some control, just like the 2-year-old who doesn't have control of their life, and so they act out and try and, they can't communicate, so they feel out of control. They are just trying to get the control back from you by, throwing a threat out there and by trying to claim some money back. So don't judge them, but they are that kind of category of complainant. They want money back. The next category is, these are in no particular order, the next category is they just want to feel heard. This is a sort of fairly big category as well. And this is good news, because often you don't have to come up with some big solution. The thing can just kind of fizzle out when someone feels heard. And this is why it's so incredibly important, guys, to let them feel heard. You cannot just hide away in WhatsApps or hide away in emails or, worst case scenario. I mean, I hope no one watching this would ever consider doing this, but block them or whatever. Maybe they're abusive, but let's be quite liberal with that term of abuse. Like, come on, guys, this person, you have a duty of care to them. You've treated them, you've put a needle in their face. You need to look after them. Don't be hiding. That would be totally unacceptable in my opinion. So make sure that you are talking to them. What's my point here? I can't remember what I was saying. So they want to feel heard. That's a category of person. And the final category is an interesting one to me, actually. I quite admire these people. They are people who want the system to change. They don't want money. They don't particularly even want to be heard massively. They don't need it to be rectified because they've almost kind of just gone beyond, and they don't. Sometimes people fall out of love with aesthetics treatments as a result of having had a problem, and they're like, do you know what? I don't want any more treatment. I don't even want it rectifying or whatever. I'm just out of here, but on my way out, I want to make sure that this doesn't happen to other people. I saw a lot of that in second stage NHS complaints, working for the Healthcare Commission, because obviously, terrible things like, children have died and things like that. These people aren't wanting, basic stuff. They want to make sure that no other children die. So that kind of person is someone to watch out for as well. And if you identify it, you will adjust what you do. That's so incredibly important. There's an example which I can't share with you, unfortunately, but of a complaint that happened at Skin Viva, and the person identified them as this 4th category of person. They wanted the system changed, and she wasn't explicit, but I could tell because I truly listened to her. And so what I did was I rectified the situation. I was really kind of open and honest, rectified the situation. It wasn't a clinical matter, but it was, it's like a systematic matter. Rectified the system, and then I wrote her a report about what I'd done. Like, literally, it was like, it didn't take me ages or anything to do the report. The rectifying of the situation did, but I literally wrote her a Word document with like 1.1, 1.2, and I went out of my way. And I remember, and I emailed her with it, and I didn't hear anything from her. And then 2 weeks later, everyone was saying to me, what were you even doing? You've gone way overboard with that. She's still going to take us to task because she was threatening to escalate this particular issue. What are you even doing? Just forget it, kind of thing. I mean, of course, they wanted me to still look after her, but they didn't. They thought I was going overboard. And I was victorious because 2 weeks later, she emailed me and said, thanks so much she completely changed her tone. Thanks so much for doing this. I've reviewed your document and I'm really pleased with the changes you've made. And she could see that we'd made those changes, and that was it. She was gone in a moment. And that's because I really listened to her and what her outcome was. Next, you need to decide, what is your outcome? Sounds kind of obvious. You might say, well, I just want this person off my plate, Miranda. But you need to get specific. So this will differ according to where you guys are at in your aesthetics career and your business, and also, what kind of person you are and whatever. So different outcomes could be, you might want to save money. So you might actually think, do you know what? This person's taking the mickey. Like, it's not okay that they want a full refund. They've clearly had a result. Maybe they say they haven't had much of a result on their lips or something. No, clearly they've had a result, and I want to save money. I can't be throwing away, free syringes or refunds or whatever. So that's an outcome for you. You might be really, really worried about reputation. So you might be thinking, do you know what? I've built up this beautiful, number of reviews or whatever online. I really want to keep that, and so I'm going to protect my reputation. So that will help you to guide you to what you do next, what solution you offer. You might say, well, I'm worried about contagion. If I offer her this free syringe for her lips, then I know she's got a gaggle of 5 friends, all of whom came to me, and I have a sneaking suspicion they're all suddenly going to be wanting their free syringe. So contagion might be an outcome that you want to stop. There are lots of things that you could want. Oh, another big one is you might just want them off your plate. Like, this has been going on for 3 weeks, you know, you're really worried about it all the time, you can't sleep, and so an outcome for you might be just to get rid. Be a little bit careful with that one, because I think sometimes the lizard brain desire to flight, you know, because obviously your lizard brain, which is the amygdala at the base of your brain, which is the old caveman software that used to allow you to run away from the saber-toothed tigers, that lizard brain will often tell you that you are dealing with a saber-toothed tiger when actually maybe you aren't. Well, you aren't. I mean, you aren't dealing. This person is not going to kill you. So you need to be a little bit careful, just sleep on it a bit, and before you just kind of go, oh, refund, you know. And I think if you are offering a full refund or whatever, then you should consult your insurers as well, because you don't want it to incriminate you. There are ways around that. You can sort of put things like without prejudice and ex gratia and things like that, which is a little headline that you can put on your emails that it's this is probably for another occasion, but it just means that you aren't saying you did anything wrong. You're not saying that you're liable, but you're just doing a goodwill gesture to, you know, for this client to refund them. But definitely consult your insurers if you're thinking of refunds. But I think my point here is don't get too freaked out and just like freak out and just give them a refund immediately. Sleep on it, think about it, reflect. So those are the various outcomes that you might have. Now that you know their outcome, you need to think about it, listen to them and think about it, and you know your outcome, you can come up with a solution. This is the plan stage of this. Come up with a solution and then bring them back with this solution. And this is the structure of the call that you need to do, in my experience and my opinion, in order to get a good result from this call. So it's the phoning back call, it's the solution call. So the first thing I do is obviously acknowledge them and say, hi, Karen, you know, thanks so much for your time the other day. It really, really helped me to, you know, get under the skin of what you're concerned about. And it really kind of gave me your perspective so I could see where you're coming from. Then you make reference to the work you have done during the time you spoke to Karen yesterday or whatever it was, and what you're doing now. So, I mean, I don't go into all the ins and outs if you've been consulting colleagues, whatever, but you could say something like, I've gone away, I've given this a lot of thought. I've reflected on I just heard a weird noise. I've been reflecting on, you know, what went on. I've looked at your notes, just give a little bit of an indication that you've done some work, that you're not just being slacking and on your hammock, you know, and just resenting this person, that you are actually making the effort. People appreciate that. Don't lie, obviously, but, you know, I'm sure you have been reflecting on it. The next thing you need to do is give them a little hint that you have a solution. And the reason for that is because they're probably potentially feeling a little bit cynical. They might be thinking, oh God, you know, this is going nowhere, you know, it's a waste of my time. So give them a little hint that there is a solution coming. Then dive into what we might call the negative. So from your perspective, it's basically you need to let them know, you need to almost like lay a boundary down. So if they've had a big old stinking bruise, and then you go back and look at your notes and you say, you know, client is on warfarin, advised that it's very likely she will bruise. We talked about the possibilities of, we talked about anything else was going on in her life at the moment and she didn't have anything on, and now she's telling you that her life is ruined because she's supposed to be going to her best friend's wedding. And so there's a mismatch there, and you do need to lay this boundary. You do need to, sounds a bit tight phrase, but you need to get it in there that you did everything you could, or even if you didn't do everything that you could, you do need to put your perspective across. So you sort of say, hi Jane, thanks for your time the other day. Then you say, I've gone away, I've thought about it, I've done X, Y, and Z. Then you say, I've got a solution for you, which I hope is going to work for you. So I'll come on to that in a sec. Then you need to, this is the sort of negative bit. Go back to the complaint and reflect and say, you came to me and explained that you were unhappy, blah, 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 blah. Then say, so I've been back and looked at my notes. In my notes, it confirmed what I had thought, which is that I did explain to you that there would be a chance of bruising. And as remembered, you know, you did explain that you were on warfarin. So I went round that with you and explained that to you. I noticed that you'd mentioned that you didn't have anything coming up. Maybe you forgot about the wedding. So it's just really, really tricky, isn't it? You know, the two have combined and now you're having this bad experience. Then go back to the acknowledgement and say, from your perspective, you know, I totally understand. You know, you spend a lot of money. This is money that you've been saving up. Now you have this big bruise. You know, it's really unfortunate for you. And then at that point, so you've done, just to go over the steps again, I need to write a blog on this so it's nice and clear. But you've done the little like, hi Karen, thanks for your time the other day. Then you've talked about the work you've been doing. Then you hint at the solution you've got. Then you go into your perspective. Then you mention the impact it's had on them again, so they feel heard again. Then you need to explain why you are going to give this solution. So I might be mixing up my examples now, but let's just say Karen's had a big old bruise. She says she wants a refund. You know, she says that the doctor down the road never did this to her or whatever, or her cousin thrice removed said that she's been having it 15 years and she's never had the bruise. Before you come onto the solution, which let's say in this scenario is that you're going to give her, you know, 50% off for a next session, whatever. The solution isn't particularly important for this example, but let's say that, in fact, let's make it real. So let's say Karen, she mentioned the money, didn't she, Karen? So we know she is sort of money driven in this particular scenario. So yeah, let's give her that solution, which is the voucher. So we say to Karen, we've said our perspective. So then we say, the thing is, Karen, I really like you. We had a good session. We've had a few different sessions together. I really want to keep you as a client. And I know that, you know, you have, you know, a few good friends that you've kindly referred to me. So I do want to make sure that you leave this place happy and that we have a good ongoing relationship. That's an example of the way that the reason that you might give the solution. It's not, Karen, I've clearly messed up your face. I'm so sorry. In order to overcome the fact that I've messed up your face, here's some money off the next treatment. That would not be, you know, a good and sensible solution. So explain why you want to keep the relationship. Or it might be, you know, that you don't want to keep the relationship, but there might be a different way of putting it. And then give your solution. So with that in mind, Karen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to offer you 50% off your next one. You know, it's super rare for me to offer vouchers. I'm not into discounts, but I really feel like it will be the right thing to do here for you. And then stay silent and listen to, or hopefully you're face to face, whatever. Let her speak and let her explain, is this any good for her? You might have to go back round it. You know, she might be like, start ranting again, in which case you need to go through the whole process again. I know it's tedious. I know it's a lot of work, but dude, you are in business now and you have to accept this will happen. And then you will get to the point where she will be happy with your solution. And, you know, maybe there's a point where they aren't happy, and that's probably a whole other Facebook Live. But honestly, this has worked so well for me, and I swear, like, I've literally ended up with friends after, like, I don't mean actually friends that you go out for a meal with, but I mean I've ended up with people who, you know, they have a lot of time for me and I have a lot of time for them after a complaint. And often what you'll find at the end of the complaint is they'll start saying things like, oh, it's not you, love, I know you're trying your best, and they kind of start saying that, and that's their gift to you. It's an emotional gift, and that's, you know, that means that you dealt with it really well. So you've got your plan. You, just consulting me notes here. I've given this the order of things. And then the final step in complaints management, in good complaints management, is to reflect on what went down and to, you know, actually say, what could I have learned here? And hopefully by this stage, because you've listened to them well, you won't be in like a terrible ball of resentment, you know, because resentment doesn't help anyone ever. Don't forget the amazing, one of my top 5 quotes of all time, the Mandela quote, which said, resentment, it's like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemy. So if you walk away from a complaint feeling resentful, then it's not going to serve you, and you won't be able to show up for your other clients in your marketing or in your, you know, your persona, or you might become like a grumpy mum or something like that because you're resenting them. So please don't let that be the fate of it. Reflect, get some learning from it, see what you could do better next time. So my final thought that I want to leave you guys on is this beautiful thought that I heard Oprah saying once, and it's really, really stuck with me, and it's been kind of quite impactful, very impactful for me actually in my life generally, which is she said in all of her 25 years when she was doing the Oprah show, the talk show, she would interview so many different types of people. She would interview like Beyonce and Whitney Houston and, you know, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. And she would also interview really kind of normal people like us, people who've had terrible things happen in their life, people who've had great things happen in their life, people whose children have been murdered, people who have murdered children themselves. She's interviewed every single type of person. And she said the one thing that all of them were trying to communicate to her, the enduring feeling that she had from all of those different types of people from every single walk of life, they were all saying to her in so many words, do you hear me? Am I worthy of being heard? And that's all these complainants are doing. You think they're massive dickheads, you feel like so threatened, they're going to take away this dream from you to have your own aesthetics business, everything's going to come crashing down. But I promise you, the extent to which you will succeed in complaints is dependent on how much you are willing to truly hear someone. The empathy stage is the most important. If you will let them vent, then summarize back to them and get a "that's it" or "yes, that's right." At that moment is the moment that your complaint will go literally, like you could end up with someone who is a client for life. And I'll leave you this very final little anecdote. We know someone who he was involved in a slip and trip an accident in a public location, and this person was, I won't kind of go into the details obviously, but they were involved in this trip and they were injured, and amongst all the kerfuffle, this person left something behind in the area where they were. I'm being very cryptic. And so he walked away from the incident and he was kind of dazed and confused and, you know, went to hospital, but didn't ever think at that time, oh, you know, compensation, or, oh, this person who owns this public space has totally screwed me over. And this person, my friend, was not thinking that at all. He was just thinking, you know, oh, you know, it happens, life happens, and then went off to hospital and got it sorted. And he left behind an item of clothing or something in this space. And he went back to the space and picked up this item of clothing. And the person who owned this space that they were in immediately jumped on him and started criticizing him and started saying like, oh, you know, you just want compensation, or I don't know if they quite said that quite that bad, but basically started criticizing and freaking out. So the business owner started freaking out at the victim. And it was in that moment that my friend thought, yeah, you're damn right, I'm going to get compensation. You're damn right, I'm going to, because you are a wanker. And I am going to get what could be mine. But before then, no thought of it. And so if you go into complaints with an attitude of, I am going to hear you and care for you, I'm going to look after you like you look after a 2-year-old while they're having a tantrum, and I'm going to just care for you no matter what. I have a duty of care to you. I'm going to listen so hard. I'm going to make you feel heard. Just as Oprah made those murderers feel heard. If you can do that instead of accusing this person or, you know, quoting the consent form, you know, shoving the consent form back in their face, or of, you know, implying that they are money grabbing. If you can do that, if you can resist the urge, the lizard brain urges, because you feel threatened and you are in fear, then you will have the very best outcome that you can from a complaint. You will walk away feeling that you have had a reasonable result for you and that they have had a reasonable result for them. Whereas if you start being accusatory, start being, you know, defensive, is very easy to get, then you will get this bad outcome that the person who you know, the person who my friend, the business that my friend tripped in, you will get an outcome like that because you fear, the thing is, business people fear that, and the fear makes them act in a way that has that outcome. How freaking trippy is that? So you could create that. Whereas if you do what Oprah did and listen and hear people and show them that they are worthy and special of being heard, then you will actually get a good outcome for you. So complaints policies are great as well, so you can kind of refer to them, especially it will help you navigate through and just sort of say, so what my complaints policy is that I always get back to people, you know, within X days, and try and do it as a sell, like you're gonna, you know, I'll always be speedy and get back to you and all that. So that's good to have. It's always good to have the complaints policy. I don't think anyone else was particularly commenting. People saying good video. Thank you, my loves. Right, I will leave you to it, and I hope that if you are watching this, because I'm going to quote this live back to people in the future, so I hope if you're watching this in, you know, 17 and a half weeks time, please drop me a 2 to say that you are listening. I love seeing those number 2s coming through. So drop me a 2 if you have found this useful. Drop me a 1 if you're watching live. Drop me a 2 if you found this useful in the future. All right, my darlings, take care.